A hiker, traveling through the French Alps, came across a barren, windswept valley. The valley was completely devoid of life, save for a few scraggly bushes and a lone shepherd tending to his flock of sheep. The hiker was about to turn back when he saw the shepherd stoop down and plant an acorn in the ground. The hiker was puzzled. Why would anyone plant a tree in such a desolate place? But the shepherd just smiled and went about his work. The hiker decided to stay and watch. The shepherd planted acorns every day, and over time, the valley began to change. The acorns sprouted into saplings, and the saplings grew into trees. The trees provided shade and shelter for the animals, and the valley began to teem with life. The hiker stayed in the valley for many years, and he watched as the forest grew and thrived. He came to understand the shepherd's simple wisdom, that even the smallest act of kindness can make a difference. The hiker learned that the shepherd's name was Elzéard Bouffier. He was a simple man, with a long white beard and a gentle smile. He had lived in the valley for many years, and he had seen it change over time. The valley had once been lush and green, but it had been ravaged by war and neglect. The trees had been cut down, the soil had been eroded, and the animals had fled. But Bouffier was determined to restore the valley to its former glory. Every day, he would plant acorns in the ground. He would plant them in the barren soil, in the cracks of the rocks, and even in the shadows of the mountains. He did not know if his efforts would be successful, but he was determined to try. Over the years, Bouffier's trees began to grow. They sprouted from the ground, they reached for the sky, and they spread their branches wide. The valley began to change, and life began to return. Birds nested in the trees, animals grazed in the meadows, and flowers bloomed in the fields. The valley was once again a place of beauty and abundance. Bouffier continued to plant trees for the rest of his life. He never gave up, even when it seemed like his efforts were in vain. He knew that even the smallest act of kindness could make a difference, and he was determined to make a difference in the world. Years later, the hiker returned to the valley. He was amazed to see that the barren land where he had once met Bouffier was now covered in a lush forest. The trees were tall and green, and the sun shone through their leaves. The air was filled with the sound of birdsong, and the hiker could see deer grazing in the meadows. He walked through the forest, marveling at the change that had taken place. He could not believe that this was the same valley that he had seen so many years ago. It was like a dream come true. The hiker thought about Bouffier, and he was filled with gratitude. He knew that Bouffier was the one who had made this all possible. He had planted the trees, and he had cared for them over the years. He had never given up, even when it seemed like his efforts were in vain. The hiker knew that he would never forget Bouffier, or the gift that he had given to the valley. He was a true inspiration, and he showed the world that even one person can make a difference. Many years later, the hiker returned to the valley one last time. He was now an old man, and he was glad to see that the forest that Bouffier planted was still thriving. The valley was now a thriving community, and the people there were grateful to Bouffier for his vision and determination. He walked through the forest, remembering the day he had met Bouffier. He thought about how Bouffier had planted the trees, one by one, over many years. He thought about how Bouffier had never given up, even when it seemed like his efforts were in vain. The hiker was filled with gratitude for Bouffier. He knew that Bouffier had made the world a better place. He had shown the world that even one person can make a difference. The hiker sat down on a rock and closed his eyes. He listened to the sound of the birdsong and the wind in the trees. He felt at peace, knowing that Bouffier's legacy would live on. The newcomers started to plant trees of their own. They knew that the forest was important to the valley, and they wanted to help keep it thriving. They planted trees in the barren soil, in the cracks of the rocks, and even in the shadows of the mountains. They worked hard, and they were patient. They knew that it would take time for the trees to grow, but they were determined to make a difference. The newcomers also worked to preserve the valley's natural beauty. They picked up litter, they cleaned up the streams, and they planted flowers in the meadows. They wanted to make the valley a place where people could come to relax and enjoy nature. The newcomers also helped to create a sustainable community. They built houses that were energy efficient, they used solar panels to generate electricity, and they composted their food scraps. They wanted to create a community that was good for the environment and good for the people who lived there. The newcomers' efforts were successful. The forest thrived, the valley's natural beauty was preserved, and the community became sustainable. The newcomers were proud of what they had accomplished. The story ends with a look to the future. The forest continues to grow and thrive, like a beacon of hope in a world of change. Tourists and nature lovers flock to the valley, to experience its beauty and its peace. The people who live in the valley are grateful for Bouffier's legacy, and they are committed to continuing his work. They plant more trees, they clean up the streams, and they work to make the valley a better place for all. They know that the forest is a precious resource, and they are determined to protect it for future generations. The valley becomes a model for sustainable living. The people there use renewable energy, they recycle and compost, and they live in harmony with nature. They are an inspiration to others, and they show the world that it is possible to live a good life without harming the environment. The story ends with a message of hope. It shows that even one person can make a difference, and that even the smallest act of kindness can have a lasting impact. Bouffier's story is a reminder that we all have the power to change the world, and that we all have a responsibility to do our part to make it a better place.